everybody. My name's Alex. That's Eileen. And you guys are watching Straight the Chicane podcast. And here we are talking about Formula One, specifically the Belgium GP. We are at Spa. There's always weather. It's my favorite race.
There's always weather, shall we say.
Yeah. This weekend we had, if you guys didn't know, we had a sprint race. So we had really only one practice. And it was qualifying for each event, and then it was on for the actual events. That was sprint and then the GP.
Yeah.
Now, before I continue, how was it? How was your weekend? I know you were busy. You had a lot going on.
Yeah.
You did get to enjoy some of the things.
It fell on the worst weekend for me for work. But I did enjoy the sprint race.
Good.
Live, and I did get to listen and watch part of the race, but it was a little hectic. Not my normal setting of being on the couch, enjoying a coffee,
Sure,
watching the race, being excited, being able to be passionate about the race. So.
Right.
But overall, it was a mixed weekend. I mean, I think we're coming off of Hungary, where we felt underwhelmed with the race, and I think going into this, we expected rain. Again,
I think you have to always expect rain. I know. However, they came to Spa now in a different time than when they normally would come to Spa, hoping it would be a little bit drier. They have fixed the big parts of the straightaway, which they would call there at Spa, to be a little bit safer. So all the things aside, they were hoping for a little bit better, drier running. Mm-hmm. Now, it is, like you just said, Spa. It's in the mountains.
It always rains. I mean, and I think, for us, 2021 was canceled.
Yep.
We're going into the weekend. It looks like it's going to rain every single day. We already had one race canceled. So there was even talks of what is the plan for if there wasn't going to be qualifying, how did they set the grid? So they were going to set it in championship order if they couldn't qualify. So that was the first, conversation of that we've ever had.
So you told me, because I didn't even actually know how they set the grid, and it makes sense. It's by the way that they are in the current order.
Championship order.
Right, right.
And so same thing for the sprint race, because every day, the start of the day started with rain. So it was and this is obviously for qualifying, so Friday and Saturday. So same thing for Saturday. Well, if it doesn't take place, then we're going to, just set the grid by qualifying order. Luckily, it didn't have to take place that way. I mean, it would have been exciting seeing, the top people together, because we did kind of have a mixed up Grand Prix start. But, that was the first conversation. But luckily, we didn't have to, see that happen. So.
No, we didn't. Honestly, this weekend there was some good stuff that happened. But honestly, there was a lot of, news that kind of happened beforehand, right? Breaking news right in the beginning of the weekend, we saw that Otmar was being let go.
Well, we saw Laurent Rossi from Ferrari, which we knew he was leaving, but we thought he was leaving at the end of this year. And the announcement was made essentially going into Friday that it was his last race weekend. And he wasn't even going to be there. So he didn't come. So for me, I was like, oh, here we go. Silly season typically starts, I feel like, at Spa, if not right after Spa, like we saw last year. But as we all remember last year, Vettel announced his retirement going into this weekend. So we saw that. So it was okay. We knew Ferrari put out the statement, we knew he was leaving, but not so sudden. And then obviously, like you said, Otmar and I can't think of the second person from Alpine. I'm sorry, that were leaving.
Yep.
Effective essentially this race weekend, announcing it going into the press day. And so it's they couldn't have just waited until the end of the weekend, effective immediately, he's leaving. So it was the looming announcement that was happening. And some of the media people found out via a French press release or something going into media day. And so it was sparked this big controversy. But clearly Alpine's not having the greatest year. And
well, I think now that they have some new management that are taking, minor stake, I think they are putting their 2 cents in. Look, Amar, he's kind of one of the newer guys to the team. He's not been in that organization as long. He's only been there for 2 years or so.
I think it's only been a year and a half.
So not even in 2 years. Okay, yeah. So
he left Aston Martin.
I know he left.
Racing Point.
Yeah, Racing Point. So I think I think he's just not the right fit. They want something that's slightly more aggressive, younger. I don't know.
No, I don't know. There's been a lot of drama around Alpine.
There has.
And just obviously Prost left.
He did.
And he's had some very, very loud and spoken words. He's chosen some things to say, even this weekend after the announcement came out. So interesting. Now, on the other end with him leaving, so obviously the team principal, we have an acting team principal, shall you say, but the rumor is Mattia from ex-Ferrari team principal is the front runner.
Yeah, and I bet that's probably what's going to happen for sure. Usually they're pretty good with the rumors being right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So a little bit kickoff of silly season. Now we haven't heard anything with drivers yet. So, with the exception of Danny Ricciardo coming back, but I'm hoping for some news over this break.
Yeah. So speaking of Daniel, so it's his second race now. Mm-hmm. How do you think he is performing? How is he looking? He's had some not the greatest luck, I guess.
He would have done really good going into qualifying, but his lap time got deleted for track limits. And it was the last lap that he put on in Q1. But he would have been I think P6 or P8.
He was I think P6-ish. Yes, yeah. You're right. Yep. And then it did get deleted, and unfortunately, it put him right in the back of the field.
It did, but I think he's doing pretty good.
I think so.
Coming back, and he beat Yuki last weekend, and he didn't beat him this weekend.
No.
But he had some challenges, I think, during the race. But we'll see. I think there's a lot more to come from him as he gets comfortable. So.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, so what else? What else you got for me? I know you were wanting to talk about some other things besides just the race because, for the race wasn't. Look, Max is so dominant right now that. It really is about the second, third place, and all the more of the back of the midfield.
Well, I guess let's put it in perspective. So Max averages 26.2 points per race weekend, and the maximum that you can score is 26. So that just goes to show you, because he's winning the sprint race, obviously too.
Yeah.
Going for fastest lap. There's a lot that's happening. So he's averaging more points than feasible as a driver. So essentially, the championship is pretty much over at this point. So
he says it can be up as soon as Singapore, right? So that's what, 2 races away now?
I think it's 3 when we get back. But he's essentially hasn't had to win a race, for the last 3 race weekends, and could still have it in the bag. So
yeah.
Obviously going into this weekend, he did take an engine penalty, not an engine penalty. What did he take? A new gearbox to add into the pool. So he took a 5-place grid drop, and everyone's like, Max has never started from P6 and won a race before. And I'm like, he won from P14 last year.
Yeah, but so then
I get the
stat is that he's won from P14 or whatever, and he's won probably from near the back of the grid or whatever.
He's
won from all kinds of places. He he hasn't won from P6 yet.
Yeah, but he won from P14 last year. So I was like,
but that was last year at P14. This year at P6.
Okay,
Can he do it?
Yeah, well, he did it. So not a surprise.
He did it fairly quickly too.
Lap 17.
Yeah. Look, you say that the 2 Red Bulls are the same car.
Now that's the big controversy that's going on is that, here's another weekend where Perez started P2.
Yep. It took him a second to get to P1, not very long, but it was pretty much right away.
Yeah. So he's P1, obviously. Max had a great start. He ends up catching him on lap 17. He finishes the race 22 seconds ahead.
And he backed off apparently because he wanted originally to go for a practice pit stop.
He didn't want to.
And if he could have pushed it a couple laps more earlier, he probably would have had enough space to get that pit stop for fastest lap.
I think he was just being a little cheeky. Now, that was the entertainment of the weekend, was Max and his engineer.
Sure.
Qualifying, we had the whole moment where he almost didn't make it through to Q3. He barely scraped through P10, and essentially Max was like, what type of strategy was that? We should have went push. And his engineer was like, okay, well, then you tell me what you want to do. You tell me the fuel levels and the tire and this. And so
you're right. It was all weekend. And now the question really is it real? Is it kind of for show? Is that just how they talk to each other?
Oh my God. I think it's a little bit of everyone. I mean, obviously his race engineer gets Max's personality.
Sure.
Max was not happy scraping by through Q2. Now, to Q3. Now, would it have been a little bit more entertaining if Max didn't make it to Q3 and he started P11? He still would have won, but we might have saw a little bit more excitement in the race. But no, I think it's all just banter between them.
Yeah.
I think he was pissed, and I think the comment, he was like, well, you're through. And Max was like, I don't give a shit that I'm through in P10. And he was like, okay, well, then you tell me what you want to do.
Yeah.
So he's just getting a little sassy back.
Okay, so that's what you think? It's just sass back.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, I think...
I mean, he apologized post pole position at the end of qualifying and was like, hey, sorry, GP, for getting a little, and he, a little spicy there, or whatever he said.
Right.
And he was like, oh, I'm getting used to it.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, so then you saw the memes of that's like the old married couple, right?
Yeah, well, that's what Christian Horner called them.
Yeah,
there's banter like an old married couple.
Yeah,
but,
so there you go.
We saw the same thing during the race. That was kind of like the highlight, the entertainment. So he came out on the softs on his second pit stop, which was supposed to be his final. And his outlap, I think he was pushing too hard.
Yeah, he did.
Because he wanted to have the fastest lap, which he got. And then it was like, hey, this tire had reasonable deg. You need to be careful. Use your head. And, some of the comments, like, you're kind of asking Max to get a little pissed. Like, you're not really using your head. And he's like, well, I'm the one in the car, essentially. So don't tell me, like, what to do. And he said it post-race. Like, I know they see what's happening, but they don't really know and don't feel what's going on. So that's when he made the whole... Well, I could just push a little extra and we could go for, another pit stop.
Another pit stop. And imagine that if he could have pushed it a little harder and went for another pit stop. I mean,
he probably could have, essentially, but they were like, no, we're not doing that.
So then you start seeing memes and people saying, is Red Bull still sandbagging? Because they could have did it some more. And honestly, I think the car was just dialed in. It's not really using its tires in any wrong way, apparently, in any bad weather. Because like for an example is if we can, talking about McLaren is like in the dry, it was noticeably a difference with Lando, the way his car was set up this weekend, that in the dry, his car was slower than slow. Mm-hmm. Was like a big sail in the wind, apparently, on the straights. But once it rained, he was passing people. He was making moves. He made a really good pass. I know it was Logan Sargent, but it was on the outside of a turn that no one has ever passes at.
And I don't know about you, but that Williams is a rocket ship.
Alex Albon had that.
If I hear Crofty say that Williams is a rocket ship,
it wasn't just Crofty though. It wasn't just Crofty.
It was like everybody for the whole weekend.
It was.
And I get it.
It was both broadcasts. It was a lot of people.
The Williams is fast, but it's like I keep seeing on social media that Williams is a rocket ship, and then they finish P17 and P18.
I think, it's a combination of things. Is like in the straight, that car is really, really slick, fast.
Yeah.
Turns, low speed, mid speed, middle speed turns, not so much. And then maybe they don't, they also have the worst, sort of the worst pit stop location being all the way at the end. And then it's, probably a lot of strategy is not the greatest, for them. I think the team is still kind of on the smaller side and things like that. So I don't know. Look, I think it's pretty cool. I think it was great.
It is a good car. Like, it is fast on the straight. I think, and
in qualifying mode, Alex was getting there.
Yeah. Well, even Logan, I feel like performed pretty good. In the last couple of weekends, you can tell he's getting better with the car, but I think he spun out and he had some issues, but he's also a rookie, so we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, you're right.
So, but yeah, no, it was just, I wanted to pin that in there because we heard it, and anyone who watched the race heard it a million times.
They
Williams is a rocket ship.
They did.
Like, man, you would think it's a Red Bull.
You're right. And speaking of rookies, because you just mentioned that, honestly, we kind of saw one leave recently. And we kind of see Logan doing okay. He's holding in there. I think he's still got a lot to learn. And in the last few weeks, especially, we see now Oscar Piastri really performing really well. I mean, finishing P2 in the sprint, if you haven't seen it, that's where he finishes, really, led the race for a little while.
Right. No, it was, I would say, the sprint was the highlight of the weekend. Definitely. So the sprint shootout, we saw pretty tight qualifying. We had Oscar Piastri was 11 thousandths off of pole position from Max. Pretty damn impressive. So that's where, it was almost like a mix of Spa 2021, the race is getting delayed. It was like downpouring. Like at one point there was like a pipe or like a drain that was literally bubbling with water.
It was, it was overflowing. There was more.
We didn't know what was going to happen. Is the race going to start? And then it was like a combination of Hungary 2021, where are we going to see everybody pit? Which we ended up seeing half the grid pit, half the grid not. So it was unusual on the first lap. But what happened was, if you didn't pit, you pit on the next lap, and that's when we saw Oscar be able to take the lead.
And honestly, we have seen 19 cars all pit at the same time. The year that Lewis was the only one on the
2021, like I just said.
Like you just said, right? So all 19, maybe all 20 cars could have pitted at the same time.
Yeah, but then every team was like having to double stack.
Yeah, and it would have been chaos.
Which it already was just with half the field. Like, it was, we saw Lewis get held up by 5 seconds. We saw a lot of cars coming out at the same time and going side by side in the pit lane. And, that was crazy in itself. But
it was all the cars that pitted first benefited the most.
Yeah.
That was for sure. That was, clear as day.
And I feel like every team, with the exception of Ferrari, had at least one driver come in.
So, again, Ferrari.
Well, they didn't do terrible.
No.
We saw them, basically finish P4, P5 because of the incident between Lewis and Sergio.
Yeah.
So
that was the incident that happened during the sprint. Mm-hmm. And pretty much Lewis was on the inside, coming into one of the turns, and was it Sergio kind of nudged right into him, and then the tires, everything kind of just hit and exposed Sergio's side. Right? Am I correct?
His side pod, yes.
The side pod was pretty well exposed for a fairly long period of time, and I think you were the first one. Am I wrong? Am I right?
I saw it immediately.
But other people didn't quite see it right away.
No, they didn't see it right away. They just were like, oh my God, he's falling down, like what's going on? I think Sergio had cooked his tires like going in to that little bit of battle, because he was struggling. So kind of speaking to Red Bull never struggles on their tires. I think it's just Max that just never struggles. But listen, we are all asking for close racing. We're all asking for close racing. Whatever side you fall on of whose fault it was a good little battle, and things are going to happen. Neither one of them backed down. And, we've seen it in a lot of other incidents, where it's just a racing incident. It's this, it's that. So from my point of view, and don't get mad at me, I don't think it was worthy of a penalty, in my opinion, because when you look at it, he was more than halfway up alongside Sergio going into the corner. Mm-hmm. He had the inside line. And then, of course, he oversteered or understeered or whatever and ended up hitting Sergio. It did ruin his race. So, of course, I think that's why it warranted a penalty. But, yeah, it was a pretty significant damage. Very similar to Baku sprint, where George and Max came together. And Max had the damage to his side pod, but this one was a little bit worse.
And was there a penalty?
There was not a penalty because it was a lap 1 incident.
Okay. And so this was definitely not a lap 1 incident. This was later, It
was not, yeah. It was like right in the middle of the sprint. Now, the sprint was only 11 laps.
That's because the first 4 or 5 laps
were under formation.
Yeah, that's right. So they were trying to get the water cleared off. And I think that's the right thing to do. I've heard some people say, Julian Palmer say, and it makes sense. Like if it's raining so bad that you need to actually have the full wets, it's probably a red flag or under safety car race. If it doesn't need that tire, so then it needs, the intermediates, then it's pretty good to race. It just needs to get up in the air, cleared out of the way. And then you hear also people like George Russell say that they need to do something about clearing up the visibility. I heard him in the press conference say that the track is good. Track is not any more dangerous, not any less dangerous than any other track out there that they have to race at. It's just, it has to do with the visibility. And it's the visibility with the amount of evaporation that those tires are able to suck off, and the cars too are able to suck right out of the ground. You see how much it was. We went to Canada. We saw how much spray was coming up, and then how actually fast. Yeah, it was within a few laps. There was a dry line starting.
Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, was it worthy of a penalty or not, in your opinion?
I think because it was a sprint race, it should not have been the penalty points. Like if it was 5 seconds, it is what it is.
Don't think he should have got the 2 points?
I don't think he should have gotten the 2 points on his license because it's not part of the Grand Prix. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think it was worthy maybe half that. Yes, it did ruin Sergio's race, so that was the point of the 5 second. And the way some of these cars are right now, the middle pack. 5 seconds, right now puts you either, if you're in third, it could put you like four cars back.
It's not even that. 5 seconds in a sprint race
that too
is like 30 seconds in a regular race.
Sure, or I would say maybe 15, but yes, I know what you're saying.
It's extreme, and so but at the end of the day, it's neither here nor there. The decision's the decision.
So then maybe it should have been a 3 second race or penalty, but I don't know. That's the thing is like, because everything it's cut down by a percentage, right? So the GP is this big, right? So and the sprint race is 100 kilometers. It has to be 100 kilometers. So that's like a third of it, right? Or whatever it is. So maybe it's all those values go down by a third. I don't know. There needs to be maybe more talk. Who knows? Now that there's 6 of them, and possibly maybe more for next season or something different for next season, I don't know.
We'll see. But I mean, it was harsh, in my opinion.
It was.
In your opinion, not so much. And that's, I think, the F1 community is you're either on one side or you're on the other side.
I think I think it wasn't as harsh as it could have been.
I thought it was just great. It was great to see some wheel-to-wheel action. I was like, "Oh my god, this is great!" He's going for the overtake, but
you definitely want to see it,
right?
For
you don't
sure.
want to see it being race ending. I get it. You definitely don't. And so but I think Sergio was struggling going into that corner, and so. And Lewis said it, and I mean, obviously, the damage was just so significant. I
just think it was the understeer that Lewis had that caused him to go.
Well, yeah,
wide
he went on the line, going into the corner, slipped. It's raining, and so people are saying he shouldn't have even tried for it.
So then that's his fault. Yep, got it.
Penalty, penalty check.
I mean, look, just like, in the race, like here now, it was a lap 1 incident with Oscar Piastri here, and it was unfortunate because he was near the front here for the main race, and he ended up falling back and out of the race really quickly.
I will say on this one, Oscar should not have tried that.
He should not.
He was not even on the track.
He should have fell back and lived another day. And I think in hindsight, now that he sees that, I think he even knows that. Yeah. Now, for lap 1, it's a racing incident because you're always going to, gut instinct, when you're a racer, you're going for it. Mm-hmm. You're going to, you see a gap. Now, granted, that gap is always going to close. And it would have been 3 wide going into that turn, which would have been pretty gnarly because turn 1, if you guys don't know, turn 1 at Spa is pretty much a complete 180. Because you're going here and you're going completely that way up the hill, and so
I think it's more like a 90 degree, not a 180. 180 would be like turning all the way around.
It's turning here and going right back the other way.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Okay.
So I was right?
Sure.
Yes, thank you. It's a hairpin turn.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that they both see it from different perspectives. Carlos was getting demolished on Twitter because he was like, oh, maybe it's because of his inexperience or whatever that he went for it.
Yeah.
I think it was aggressive. You know, he's obviously Oscar had a good weekend. I mean, led the sprint at one point.
Is looking better than Ferrari right now, for sure.
Yeah. They didn't have a better race weekend. I think Ferrari did okay. Leclerc was on.
Well, yeah.
On
I mean,
podium.
and Oscar.
Carlos obviously retired, so I mean, they took each other out. Yeah. So. Not without trying, Carlos. He tried to go for many laps.
I can't believe. I know. I can't believe when they brought him in that they just changed the tires and were like,
go back out. Yeah.
I figured maybe slight checking to make sure everything was okay. It was a really quick pit stop for them for how much damage there probably really was.
Yeah.
Another thing I really want to point out, and is McLaren, is after Oscar Piastri got out, there was some rain in the race, and I was like, oh. It was dry. It was kind of boring. Things were kind of, and I was like, "Ooh, some rain would kind of change it up. Things are gonna think." And then they said rain was coming in. As soon as it started, it did hit. It just didn't come down hard enough. But what I did see with McLaren is Lando, his car performs way better than a lot of other cars in the rain.
You just really want to talk about Lando and his rain laps.
The rain laps were good. He was fast.
So proud.
I mean. The car was impressive.
Like a proud dad.
No, but I think what it was, yeah, sure. I think he had the car. I think he said that the car was set up for more rain. I think he was hoping for more rain. That's why they had the car kind of set up higher, and it wasn't to their advantage. But
overall, Lando didn't have the greatest weekend.
He didn't.
I mean, he damaged his car in Q1. Still was able to put it P7, which people were impressed with.
Yeah.
But overall, when you compare it to he had back-to-back podiums, so it was like, okay, we're going in. We're expecting McLaren to be up fighting for the front. So I'm like, maybe was it track suited? Was it car issue, setup, whatever? It was an unusual weekend.
Yeah.
So okay, well. Lando was the highlight of your weekend.
I think Oscar. I think it was McLaren because I was impressed with how well Oscar did. For definitely the sprint during qualifying, he's been looking really good. He had a really good chance. Unfortunately, it didn't work on his end. I did like the way Lando looked in the rain. But the rain during the race was 10 laps, not even. And right. It didn't really rain enough for him to go anywhere. And like you said, once it dried out again, he was falling back. And I think Ferrari was ahead of them, Mercedes. I think even Yuki Tsunoda maybe would pass them. I can't remember if that's how it went. There was a whole lot going on. So
yes. So a couple things I want to talk about.
Go ahead.
So George Russell. I want to talk about George Russell. So he had a very unusual weekend. And he said it this is the worst he's felt. And then just with the weather changing and everything. But obviously, sprint qualifying, regular qualifying, just bad performance just in general. And so let's talk about him and Lewis and the miscommunication that they seem to keep having, I feel like, during qualifying. So, we see this Q1 lap or whatever it was where he, of course, the sprint qualifying, basically cuts over in front of Lewis and ruins his lap. He's on a cool down lap. So he just did his flying lap. Nowhere near even getting through, whatever. Because he obviously didn't get out of SQ1 and just blocks Lewis, where Lewis felt like, he could have been essentially in a better position.
So what are my thoughts on their teammates wise or what?
Well, why does it keep happening? And it might not have been sprint qualifying Q1 or whatever, but I think it was Q3 because Lewis was essentially improving because remember it came down to the last lap for everybody.
Sure. Yep.
And he could have been pretty much fighting for the front row and then ended up being P5. So yes, it was Q3, but George was P10 and he wasn't getting better and he had struggled all weekend.
Yeah,
and so it's is it really a miscommunication from the team Are they just using that as a, oh, let's, put this statement out there because there's more to the story?
There's probably more to the story.
Is George essentially doing it on purpose? Now, we saw, I think, in qualifying for the actual race, I think it was Q1, where there was the investigation of the two drivers because Lewis re-entered the track, I think, at Eau Rouge. And was it impeding? Now, it ended up not being it, but in sprint qualifying, was that done on purpose? Like, is George feeling some type of way because he had a crap weekend? He wasn't looking good. Lewis was feeling good with the car. They ran 2 different setups. Did he do it on purpose? Was it an actual miscommunication? And why is there so much miscommunication at Mercedes?
I don't know. You're right about that. There seems to be a lot of miscommunication, honestly, everywhere, too. But, yeah, there in particularly, I think George is maybe not as alert in the car.
I mean, we saw them come together in qualifying or practice, where they came together in the Spanish GP weekend. And so it's like, why does this keep happening? And they called that a miscommunication too.
I think George has a lot to prove, and I think he's trying to prove it because you've heard him say in that lie detector video that we watched that like he's faster than Lewis now. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think he's got a lot to prove to say that that's the case. He was consistent last year. Didn't he get more points? He finished higher.
He did finish higher.
Yeah, so, I mean, okay, sure.
But I think for, Lewis, he ran all the, setup and, the test and all that the first half of the season.
And I will say this year, this car, Lewis is looking a lot better, a lot more consistent. And I will find out at the end of the season where that ends up. But
well, I mean, so there's the battle. It's, I guess you shall say, the battle for best of the rest in the drivers. So it's Max P1, Sergio P2, and then it's Alonso and Hamilton are 1 point apart. And I think after this weekend, is it Charles and George are tied?
And where's Sergio?
Sergio's P2.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the best of the rest. Yeah.
So essentially, I mean, I still think Lewis will finish ahead. I think he'll finish P3 if we don't see something spectacular happen and Red Bull just stays 1-2. I still don't think it's far-fetched for there to be a challenge for P2 in the Drivers' Championship, but I don't, just based on Aston Martin's kind of backwards performance, I think that Mercedes is going to continue the momentum going into
I do too. I do too. And I think Lewis could fight for that P2 spot.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. They seem to have a really good relationship. Maybe it is just miscommunication, but somebody needs to get their shit together because it's making them look like amateurs. For an 8-time constructors champions, why are they having all these problems?
There's a lot of teams having problems.
It's not just them. But it's come on, it's a little embarrassing. They're ruining their own performance. But, okay, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay.
Secondly,
go ahead.
I want to talk about Red Bull. I want to go back to Red Bull.
Yep.
So, obviously, there's been a lot of conversation about, is it 2 separate cars? Is it not? How is Max so much better than Sergio? So, Sergio has gone on the record to say, Max does not have a different car than I do. We have the same car. I just need to change my driving style. So, is Max just that good? Or is Sergio that bad?
I think Max is that good with that car. They set the car up for Max. Mm-hmm. So however Max likes to drive, however...
Yeah, but every driver gets to choose their own setup, so...
No, that's not true because sometimes the car with the way the springs, if it's an over or if it's an under, Sergio might perform better with a different setup like that. There's all kinds of different setups that benefit the way he drives, which is tire saving, longer stints, he was the tire whisperer at one point, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think Max is very aggressive, very on the nose, likes things on rails, likes things, to be very reactive. And granted, now we are talking maybe different things that you and I wouldn't really notice or pick up. But, these guys, the way certain balances or the fact that, like I said, the way they have the springs set up for the way the shocks are or something like that. Because every car is different with all that stuff.
Right.
So there is a big into setup on what could make Max perform better in the car that he likes, more so than maybe a car that would be built for Sergio and the way he drives.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely like Max is just that good.
he's that good.
He's that good. So I'm like, for me, it's, I mean, downright impressive, like what he's doing, like very minimal mistakes. I mean, will Red Bull win every race this year? That's the question.
That is a good question.
We've got
probably, but I hope not.
Max has won 8 in a row. Red Bull has won every single race this year. Going into summer break, every single race.
Every race.
Uncontested. I mean, we're talking up to 30-second gaps.
Now, I can tell you a lot of the teams are taking that to heart, especially Mercedes. They're doing probably everything they can. Now, granted, at some point, they're going to have to stop and move on to the next season, but they're going to try. And look, that means Red Bull has to be perfect. Now, granted, they've been perfect so far, like you just said, but that things have to go perfect every single time.
I mean, I know there's going to be like engine penalties that come into play, but I'm like, I don't know. George said it race 1. Red Bull's going to win every race this year.
He did. You're right.
And I'm like, honestly, I think it might happen. I'm like, no, I think that there probably will be some, competition. I hope so. I hope there's some, factors that go in. Will Max, once he wins the championship, kind of cool it? I don't think so. I think
go to Disney World early and say,
I think he's that competitive that it doesn't matter to him, that he's like, you know what? I won the championship. I want to win as many races as possible. That's what he's there to do. But I hope that we get something. I hope we get someone else. Just for like the excitement of seeing, a different podium, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think Red Bull's going to win every race this year?
Yeah, we're curious. I think it's likely. You think it's likely?
I do too. Yeah.
I'm guessing they're going to think it's kind of likely too. We are curious. I'm also curious on what your guys' thoughts were on this weekend. Who was your driver of the day?
I mean, I think I'd go with Max too. For the race, yes.
And then
I think for the sprint race, I think Oscar, because he had a great sprint qualifying and he had a great race. He held the lead. Max is just, that good that he was able to, essentially I knew Max was going to win, but it was, fun to see Oscar lead the sprint race. But I think Max is he just looks so good. Very minimal mistakes. He's at ease. He's cracking jokes. He's having fun. He's winning. He's beating his teammate by 22 seconds when he started 5 places behind him. We should be seeing wheel-to-wheel battles between them, but we're not. And, I think for this weekend, definitely for me, Max.
And I think that goes to say and show you that the 2021 season was that special. The fact that it had to go down to the last race of the last lap.
What a spectacle.
It was a spectacle. It was a nail biter from coming back from break and going to the last few races. It was a nail biter for 2021.
I know.
It was incredible. And I think we all are thriving for that, because in this modern era that's the standard.
That felt like the pinnacle. It was like, oh my God.
It was damn near the pinnacle. Look.
The two teams duking it out now. Obviously Mercedes won, but that just led up to how hungry Red Bull was going to be the next year.
Yeah, look, Red Bull, they've been planning this era for a while. They were sick and tired of Mercedes running the previous era. Mm-hmm. And I think this is their time right now, and it's up to the whatever team is going to be next, whether it could be McLaren, because McLaren's looking pretty fast and pretty good, or it's Mercedes, because we like Mercedes. We're wearing a lot of Lewis gear here ourselves right now. And, whoever, I think you're right. We want competition. And I think at the end of the day, even Max and them, and I think even Formula One want competition. We've heard people say that the American people are going to be turned away. And I think some people that are just started out are why am I watching this? This is kind of boring. Mm-hmm. I get it. I can see it. But if you really are falling in love with the sport or really enjoy it, I think
you got to watch some old races before 2021 too.
Yeah, agreed. And I think you also there's more to come.
Yeah, definitely.
I think this is just it's only the second year with these type of cars, and as by next year or the year after, these cars are going to really start to get a little bit closer. I could be completely wrong and all.
No,
but
I think so for sure. But I mean, you just never know. So I agree. Like we need a little bit of closer battle. I think it probably isn't going to happen this year. Maybe we'll see it a couple races, track specific, different things. There's a lot of teams bringing upgrades to the back half of the year still, McLaren being one of them.
Yeah.
Ferrari being another one. I'm sure Mercedes is going to do something. So there's more to come, but has Red Bull already switched to 2024 and are they perfecting their car? So now we did see, I did on TikTok this morning, that I think it's the lead or one of the, aerodynamicists for Red Bull has moved to Mercedes.
I mean, you went on LinkedIn. And
I went on LinkedIn and I found him. So it's official.
Yeah.
Thank you, TikTok.
Yeah.
I swear I'll learn more on TikTok than I do just every day. But
sometimes you're right.
yes. So the news broke on that. So, is that something more to come? But I think there will be a better championship, battle probably next year. One can hope, but I think we're going to continue to see some Red Bull dominance this year. So
Yep.
So last question, Helmut Marko going on the record saying nobody can beat Max right now. Maybe Hamilton and Alonso could bring a fight to him
If they were in the same car.
Yes, but no one can beat Max. Now Lewis post race weekend said, if I was in Sergio's car, there would be a much closer battle. Max wouldn't be having as good of a time.
Probably correct.
Yeah.
I would.
That's what we're looking for.
I mean, look, Sergio Perez is a very good racer.
Yeah.
I think also Helmut Marko said Sergio came out of his dream.
He woke up from his dream of being world champion.
Right. And I think it's starting to show that, look, Sergio is a very good driver, but he's not on the top caliber of.
He's making too many mistakes.
He does make a few mistakes.
It's like a Charles Leclerc.
But
Until they perfect the amount of mistakes that they make. I mean, obviously Charles has a little bit more with a Ferrari dealing with that team.
Now, I wonder, because Max, Lewis, here's the thing, is Max spends a lot of time in a simulator. He enjoys racing simulators.
Well, yeah, that's what he does for fun.
Right.
Besides playing FIFA.
And I think he does that, more than Charles. He definitely does it more than Lewis. And I think he does it probably more than Sergio. And I think that's where his advantage is. Mm-hmm. It's just he's putting more laps on tracks.
He has a simulator on his airplane.
Well, yeah, I would hope so. He's got a baller airplane. I would too. It's honestly, you can get a really nice setup for $10,000. So if you're a multi-millionaire, you should have $100,000 system on your multi-million-dollar plane. It only makes sense. I would, You know what I mean? So the thing is with simulators, and it's the thing that I even find that it puts me up a little bit over top of other people is that I'm racing the track more, and literally I can't do it, but he can close his eyes. And knowing based upon the rev of the car and what gear he's in, when he needs the brake, because he's raced the tracks for so long. Mm-hmm. He's that good.
Yeah.
And look, Lewis has his way of doing it, just like Fernando had his way of doing it. They're more old school. They didn't have quite the technology as what is given to 24, 25-year-olds now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but that's all part of the preparation.
Yeah, Lando's on social media doing the whole, simulator stuff too. But I think Max is really big into it, and I think that's what's his advantage is, and I think it is a great advantage over the next person. Mm-hmm. They made a movie now, Gran Turismo, where they find a driver from playing the video game to go drive in real world. I think they tried to do that in the real world too with Formula One a few years ago before really you got caught onto it. But it just didn't pan out with those guys. But it just makes sense. Look, he was Max was 17 when he got his first F1 drive.
I think it was 16.
Yeah, but I think so. He was 17 when he won. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. 16. Yeah.
I can't imagine being 16 and racing in Formula One. I can't even imagine being 18. Like, it's crazy to
It's
think.
like the LeBron James.
There's like these 21, like Oscar, Lando. They're the youngest team on the grid. Like, I mean, no fear. Like, when I was 16, like, I just got my license. Like, you know, in some of these cases, I don't even think Max had a driver's license.
Well, he didn't, because a lot of those countries you can't be
until you're 18. And he's out here racing the fastest cars in the world. It's crazy. And winning races. So,
yep.
Impressive.
Yeah. What else you got? Anything else? I think you said that was the last question.
I think that's it for me. I mean, I'm looking forward to 4 weeks off. I think
the drivers are looking forward to.
I mean, I'm not looking forward to not seeing races, but
yeah, and it's not quite. It's almost 4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like 3 weeks, and then the fourth week we go into the race week. But yeah,
and we go to Max's home race. So
yeah, and this last one was kind of his home race too. So it's like back-to-back home races for him with a little summer vacation.
This is his third and final because Austria is technically like a home race too.
Jeez, yes.
So
yeah, and I think it's a much needed break for the teams, for everybody. Formula, if you guys don't know, Formula One has a mandatory dark time for everybody that's in the factories, and it's like 2 weeks of time during this summer break that everybody goes on holiday or whatever you want to call it, you know.
Yeah, we're on holiday too.
Yeah, so I think I think it's a good thing. I think it's kind of cool. You know,
they're not allowed to work on it. I think we're going to see a lot of activities. There's going to be a lot of news to talk about, I'm sure, over the next few weeks with driver contracts, you know, team principal updates. And then post, I think, summer break is going to be when we hear a little bit about the cost cap infringement. So, you know, just to kind of tie from last week. So it's rumored that it's Red Bull, Aston Martin, and Mercedes have all breached the cost cap again this year. So more to come on that. So what's the penalty going to look like? Aston and Red Bull breached it last year. They're saying, you know, if they breached it again, there's going to be a tougher penalty. So not just a monetary fine, but
what do you think?
A sporting penalty.
Yeah, maybe you lose championship points.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Now, Christian's already gone on the record like, listen, our books are clean. I mean, we saw that last year too. And, you know, they definitely didn't, you know, go over the cost cap, which it could be. All it means is that they're under investigation to essentially review through what they spent last year. So,
yep.
We'll see.
Well, we'll see.
Yes.
All right. Well, I guess, you know, if you guys made it this far, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, comment on anything you guys heard us talk about. We want to hear your guys' thoughts. I guess that's it for us. Enjoy your guys' summer vacation from Formula One. Take some time away. Go enjoy the summer wherever you are.
Watch some old races pre-2021.
Pre-2021 or even 2021, because that was a good season.
2021 was great.
But yeah, that's it for us for now. We will see you guys in a little bit of time. All right?
Okay, bye.
Bye.